So, very, very big welcome to everyone in Denbigh Amateur Radio Club and to friends of the club that have joined us tonight. Everyone is very welcome to join our meetings. As you know, I think virtually everyone here is a club member, but we do welcome non-club members, and we'll certainly have non-club members on the live YouTube channel that is just about to start. Welcome to the viewers to Denbigh Radio Club on Zoom and also on YouTube. And I would like, just before we go any further, okay, yeah, I would like to say to people here tonight that our speaker is Chris, who's in the room here tonight. Chris was a speaker at the RSGB convention that one or two people here went to. I know Jeff M0 AUG went there, Chris M0 KPW from Cumbria. And he gave a talk there, which was a kind of follow-up talk, wasn't it, Chris, to your article in Ragcom in November, in the last edition or the second last edition of the year, where Chris wrote an article about how he went about thinking and setting up an amateur radio station in a school. And I enjoyed the article, and I thought other people would. So I was really pleased when Chris accepted the invitation. And here you are. So, Chris, I'm going to hand the microphone directly over to you and let you take it away.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Nick. So let me just share some slides with you. There you go, guys. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Okay, so just before we start, just a little bit about myself. I won't bore you for too long. I've been licensed since 2009, but I've been in the hobby since about 88. First joined the RSTB in July 1989. I've got a certificate somewhere to prove it. So although I've only been licensed for 14 years, I've been in the hobby considerably more. I got into the hobby via my uncle, who's a G3, and I used to spend many an evening tuning around on an FT101E, listening to the HF bands in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s. I looked, for those that remember, looked at the novice license, which was the original 2E0, I think, in the early 90s. And then I think the combination of school and college and ladies and other things sort of put the hobby to one side for a while. I remember being at university and taking a shortwave general coverage receiver with me, and definitely being the odd one out of university with one of them. So it's fast forward a few years that I actually got back into the hobby and licensed. Active where possible every day. I like to put some RF out every day if I can, predominantly on HF, simply because of the location that I'm in. So I'm in South Cumbria, about 10 miles north of Barrow-in-Furness, in IO84 square here. So pretty much the Lake District starts about 4 miles up the road from here, so pretty much surrounded by hills. So HF is really the sort of only sensible option from home. I enjoy a lot of VHF and above, but that does involve going out and getting wet, because it's nearly always wet and raining when I have holidays to play radio. But that doesn't deter me. I like to do a bit of sortering with a friend of mine and take part in things like the UKACs on 2 meter 70 cents, 23 cents, and things like that. So anyway, that's just a very quick intro on me. The talk we're going to look at is an expanded talk that I gave to the RSGB convention. The convention talk, well, my part of the convention talk was only 10 minutes because there were three of us who did a talk on amateur radio in schools, 10 minutes each, with some questions at the end to make the full 45 minutes up. So this is the expanded version, but shouldn't take too long. And it does cover a lot of the stuff which was in the Radcom article, but does expand on it as well. So, oops. Better. So the first thing I'm just going to do is just sort of look at where we were doing this. So we did this at my daughter's school, which is Isle of St. Peter's School in the village that I'm in, stone's throw away from here. It's known locally as ISP, and it's in Isle in the village here. It's a typical small village school, caters for children from nursery up to year 6. So that's children from about 3 up to from 4 up to 11 before they go to secondary school. And there's about 50 or 60 children in the school at the moment. Again, typical village school, so it's got quite a family feel. And there's quite a lot of community involvement with the school as well. And they have got some fantastic buildings. And one of the things they have is they have an outdoor classroom. And it was this outdoor classroom that I first saw quite a few years ago when my first daughter went to school. And I remember thinking that'll make a great shack for doing radio one day. So it was planted in my mind pretty much from the day that my daughter went to school. So, like I said, small village school. So it only has 3 physical classrooms, but within that, there's that makes up the school. So the dolphin class, which is one of the classrooms downstairs, serves the youngest children of the school. So that's nursery, reception, year 1. Whale class serves year groups 2 and 3, and then shark class, which is upstairs, serves the oldest children of the school. So that's year groups 4, 5, and 6. And the idea of something radio related, something I sort of suggested to the school a couple of years ago, back in 2019. Like I say, I'd always thought it was a good location to play some radio from, some great outdoor field spaces for setting up aerials. So I've mentioned it a couple of times over the years, almost in passing to the head teacher, but we've never really had a serious conversation on it. So we had this conversation in 2019. It was, I think, the autumn of 2019. I suggested we could do some radio. At that point, we weren't quite sure what we were going to do. We didn't quite know if we were going to do, just an hour's presentation in school, whether we're going to run an after-school club or what we were going to do at that point. But I took along some kit with me, HF kit, and my sorter dipole through the portable mast up on the field, the dipole, plugged in the radio, and sort of showed the head teacher A, how easy it was to be set up, and B, the sort of stations you could hear. I think I was probably listening to 20 or 40 from what I remember. There were plenty of stations coming in good and strong. And the head teacher thought it was a great idea, something different, and something that the children might like to enjoy. So again, we went away and respectfully we had to think about what we were going to do. And then I actually went back a couple of weeks later and had a proper sit down with the head, because there were some formalities we wanted to go through, which I'll touch on in a minute. But we came to the conclusion it needed to be more than just an hour in the science lesson on a Friday afternoon. So we came up with the idea of running it as an after-school club. So an extracurricular activity is really what it should be called. And we agreed that because predominantly we were going to use the outside space for aerials, we wanted to do it in the hopefully warmer and drier periods. So we decided to do it in the summer term of 2020. And at that point, we didn't envisage anything that would prevent that from happening until somebody mentions COVID-19. So obviously that got put on hold, and it wasn't feasible certainly wasn't feasible to do it during 2020, and it became unfeasible to do it in 2021 as well, because there was still guidance in place on distancing and the early lockdown and things like that. So it wasn't until probably about this time last year that we actually talked about it again. And that's when we decided to run it in summer term 2, so essentially June and July of this year. For no particular reason other than my availability, because I work full time, and suitability to the school, we decided on a Wednesday afternoon, and it'd run for that 1 hour at the end of school, so 3:15 to 4:15, and it would run for 5 weeks, but it was just a 5-week term leading up to the summer holidays. And between us, we decided that it's probably best in this instance to open the club to the older members of the school. So that's the children in shark class. So that was year groups 4, 5, and 6. So basically children aged between 8 and 11. So what was the aim of the club? Predominantly to introduce the children to the hobby, but also to introduce the school adults to the hobby. That's the teaching staff and the support staff. The main focus of the after school club, bear in mind it was only running for 5 weeks, we only had a finite amount of time to do something. We were predominantly looking at passing messages on HF. I've done a lot of Jamboree on the air over the years, and that was really what I had in my mind, was really about getting the kids on the air and getting them to pass some greetings messages. Why HF? Because of the location. VHF, just not feasible. We couldn't be reliant on assuming there was going to be some sorters around for an hour, a particular hour on a Wednesday each week. So HF was the obvious option there. And as I've already said, we were looking to try something a bit different to the school. So one of the things I did was took a publicity picture, which is what this picture is here. It is not a minor or unlicensed person operating the radio unsupervised. It's very much my daughter posing for a picture for the school to use to promote the club. And for the eagle-eyed among you, if you can zoom in close enough, you'll actually notice she's got the microphone the wrong way around anyway. So there we go. So really, I'm now going to look at the practicalities of how we run the club and what was needed. So some obvious things, an NOV, and we'll talk about that. The kit we used, band conditions, what were we actually going to fill the 5 weeks with? Because we can't just send greetings messages off for 5 weeks. The weather, as I've already said, it was predominantly going to be an outdoor activity, so we needed to have backup plans should the weather not be nice in June and July. There were some safeguarding questions to cover off and sort out, so we'll look at them. And then my biggest concern is, would anybody turn up? Because it's a lot of effort if nobody turns up. So we're going to look at all these in a bit more detail. So the first one, in no particular order, is an NOV, notice of variation. Most people will know that this is no great difficulty. Yes, I could have used my own call sign, could easily have used M0KPW portable or even just M0KPW. But we sort of thought it would be nice to have a special call sign, and the children would sort of like that as well. Gave the club a little bit of gravitas, and gave the children their own sort of call sign to be involved with. So I applied for Ofcom for an NOV. went with GB4 ISP, GB4 Isle of St. Peter's. That's what we're looking for. Very easy. You know how easy it is. Those of you who've done it, literally just go into the Ofcom licensing portal, fill the details out, attach it to your license, put the dates in, and job done. Those of you who have done that will know that the standard NOV is available for 28 days. And that was going to be ideal because we were running for 5 weeks. But I'd always intended the first week we wouldn't be on air. So I'd worked out that actually it was exactly 28 days from day one to the last day of the club. So that would be fine. That was fine until the head teacher told me on week 3 that we were going to have to move the last club of the last club up a day because of the school trip. So that put me out of the 28 days and into 29. So obviously, technically, the NOV would have expired. I'm sure there's people who would have not batted an eyelid at that, but that's not my style. I do like to do things right. So I think it was week 4. I sent a quick email to Ofcom. They might have even been in the online chat, actually. I think they were available online. And just asked them, is there any way they can either extend it by a day or extend it to 5 weeks or some way just to get around it to save me renewing it the day it expired. And I got a really prompt reply back from them, and they just offered to make the NOV a permanent NOV. So that sort of solved the problem, and it also meant I could keep the call for future use when we do other activities at the school. So basically, it just turned into a permanent NOV that I just have to renew, I think, at the end of the year. The kit, excuse me, the kit was always intended to be a keep it simple operation. Yes, I could have taken a 7300, an Icon 7300 or something like that, so it looks nice and fancy with the Spectrum displays and things like that. But the idea was it was a bit more of a portable operation, set up on the field, without lugging around, massive batteries or generators or things like that. So I essentially used sort of my Go kit really. FT 857, it's 857D from Yaesu, 12 volt battery. I think it's a 10 amp hour battery for those interested. Sorter beams, linked dipole for 20 and 40, and a 7 meter fiberglass mast. It's essentially the kit that I sort of have used. I use for sorter. I knew that we could put out 75 watts or so on that battery for an hour without any problems, and that was really what we were looking for. And it was all relatively easy to transport to site. I live probably about half a mile away from the school, but given the fact that I was still working on these days, I arranged with work to have my lunch hour at sort of 3:15 till 4:15. But obviously, I still needed some setup time and strip down time at the end as well. So I managed to wangle a few extra half hours here or there. So ultimately, it was about kit that I could get to site and bring away from site within a reasonable time frame as well. So that was a consideration for that. What I've called band conditions and generating interest. I've sort of already touched on it. VHF and above just wasn't feasible or wasn't reliable to be able to get enough contacts from the location. HF conditions weren't great. Certainly the first couple of weeks, conditions were really poor with deep QSB on some days. And I did have a bit of a worry about, we only had a short amount of time, an hour at the most, to generate some people for the children to pass messages to. So I put a couple of posts out on some of the Facebook groups, the UK Amateur Radio one and the Special Events Group. And they were both very, very, they got brilliant responses. People were coming back straight away, offering the time, saying they'd be listening, wanting to know where we were going to be. So that was quite good. We sort of had a bit of a response to know we were going to have some QSOs after we called. So that was quite good. And I'll come back to a point on that shortly. Timetable of activities. So again, we've sort of agreed to 5 weeks. I'd sort of said I was going to pass greetings messages. I haven't really given it much more thought than that, to be honest. So the week before, I started to have a serious think about what we were going to do. And the first thing I did was put together quite a simple work booklet for the children. Nothing spectacular. A few pages, as you can see from the screenshot. One of them was an introduction to what amateur radio is. Realistically, probably didn't expect many 8 or 9-year-olds to read that cover to cover, but I certainly thought the parents might do. There was a page on some simple codes that they might hear. So, what does 7.3s mean, QRZ, 5.9, etc. A bit of an explanation to what that is. A log sheet, so the children could log the contacts, not just the contacts they had, but other people's as well. And a prefix map of Europe, which was quite good to highlight prefixes and how call signs worked. A page for them to design their own QSL cards and a couple of examples as well. And then there was the Old Faithful phonetic alphabet and a page with a simple greetings message script that the children could add their names to. So this was something like, hello, my name is Chris, Charlie, Hotel, Romeo, India, Sierra. I am X years old, etc., etc. And I sort of learned that from Jota, is that the children get put in front of the microphone and persuaded to speak to other Jota stations, but don't have much time to prepare anything. So I figured if the children had a bit of a script, so they weren't sort of going up to the mic completely bamboozled and didn't know what to say. And then the breakdown of how the 5 weeks went, not necessarily as planned due to weather, but week 1 was always going to be that instruction that I talked about earlier, so we were never going to operate in week 1. Week 2, we're going to be on air, predominantly on 40 meters. Week 3, again, we would have been on air, but it was wet, so hence always good to have a backup plan. And then week 4 and 5 really were again on air, passing greetings messages. But again, we're going to look at the weeks in more detail in a moment. And I touched on safeguarding. This was something that obviously the school were keen on. So there were some obvious things, such as for safeguarding and to comply with school policy, it was obviously necessary for a teacher to be present at the after-school club when I was on site with the children, because obviously they're still under the school's care. So that's what happened. There was a teacher present all the time. And then there were other things that had cropped up early doors when I spoke to the head teacher around the sort of safeguarding area. And that's, they were keen to know what the children would be exposed to on air. The school had no idea of the sort of things that you would hear. So I talked to them about obviously the fact that everybody needs to be licensed, explained about the out of bound topics. So we're not meant or allowed to discuss religion, politics. There shouldn't be any bad language or anything like that. So there were considerations to bear in mind when working with children. Safeguarding isn't just about being DBS checked or CRB checked. There's also other things to think about there, and even things such as you'll see later, things about photographs and videoing children. Parents have to agree. They are minors. Parents have to agree to their images being used, certainly outside of school, for various activities. And I guess my biggest worry really was, would anybody turn up? And so I always knew I was guaranteed one. So I always knew my own daughter would turn up. But I knew there'd be at least one. And then cynical Chris cropped up, and I thought, well, if nothing else, it's cheap childcare. The school charge £1 per session per child for the extracurricular clubs, no matter what the club is. So I thought, if nothing else, parents can use it as a cheap childcare. And then there's the nosiness factor. The people who live locally and see aerials in my garden might think, oh, here's an excuse to actually find out what it's all about. So I turned up on the first day about half an hour early to just run through a few things with the head. And she said there were 10 signed up, which I was quite flabbergasted at. I was thinking 5, 6 I'd be quite happy with. So 10 was more than I'd hoped for. And they were genuinely interested kids as well. And out of a class of 24, I didn't think 10 was a bad percentage. If I could get 41% of my club to turn up to a meeting, I'd be well happy. So having 41% of the class turn up was pretty good. And my cynicalness was proved wrong as well, because none of the children had turned up that I thought the parents would have pushed them in to try and find out what all my bits of wire in the garden were for. So I'm just going to rattle through the 5 weeks in a bit more detail. Sorry. So week 1, like I've said before, it was always going to be the introduction week. It was a chance for me to get introduced to the children, most of whom I knew anyway, all friends of Sophia's, or certainly in the same class. A couple of them I didn't know that well. So they all got handed out their booklets that the school had printed out for them. There were 2 options with the booklets. They could either take them home or leave them in their sort of trays for the following week. And I was promptly advised by the school to tell the children to leave them in their trays for the week, because otherwise we'd never see them again, because they'd forget to bring them. So we handed out these booklets. We looked at the phonetic alphabet. We helped them complete the template for the greetings message. Turned it over to the next page, which was the map of Europe, held it up and said, this is a map of Europe, and then started talking about all the different prefixes and call signs. And one lad put his hand up at the back, asked him what his question was, and he said, that's not a map of Europe. And he was quite right, because it was a map of Europe, but it also had some of Asia on there and some of South Africa. So if nothing else, he'd been paying attention to his geography lesson earlier that week, which I think the school were quite pleased about. We looked at some QSL cards. I'd taken some selection of QSL cards to look at, talked about the purpose. They went down quite well. We then did some very basic maths about dipoles and what size aerials needed to be. And I'd taken along my 705, the Icon 705, and connected it to a dummy load. And the children took it in turns to speak into the mic, and they could sort of see the voice on the Spectrum score. And that proved quite popular. And one of the boys wanted to know how much the radio cost. So I sort of gave them the option to try and guess. And none of them got anywhere near the right answer. So to be honest, week 1 went by in a bit of a blur. The hour was pretty much gone in a blink of an eye. But the children were quite excited, they were quite happy, and they were all looking forward to turning up the following week, which was really the best I could have hoped for. So week 2, this is what was going to be the first week on air. So we're going to start passing some greetings messages. So my original plan, because we only had an hour, the club only ran for an hour, my original plan had been to set up early and be set up on the field, ready for when the children came out. But following talking about it in week 1, it was evident that the children actually were quite keen to get hands on and actually help put aerials up and things like that. So I don't know if anybody's put a simple 40 meter link tie pole up on a 7 meter fishing pole and plugged in a Yaesu 857 to it, 5-10 minute job at the most, even on a windy sorter. With 10 pairs of helping hands, it took the best part of 40 minutes to do it. Because everybody wanted to put a peg in, everybody wanted to hold a bit of wire, everybody wanted to hold. So, do you know what? We sort of lost a lot of time that first week, but actually we didn't, because they really enjoyed it. They enjoyed getting hands on and actually involved in pegging everything out. So that was a bit of a surprise, because we hadn't intended doing that. So anyway, we had about 20 odd minutes left, and we got the radio on, really poor conditions, but called CQ, try and get a couple in, and we got a couple come back, but to be honest, they were just really, really poor signals, and the kids couldn't hear them. It's hard enough for me to be able to work it out. So finally, we got Rob, G0HRT, came through good and strong, and he was willing to take some greetings messages. So we really didn't have time, but I think we were literally down to sort of the last 10 minutes of the hour. We didn't have time for the whole group. So I asked who wanted to send a greetings message. A load of arms went in the air. And I just picked the 3 nearest, actually. And that was Joe, Seth, and Sammy Ted. So we had an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old. And they all sent brilliant messages over to Rob. They were quite confident. They were very loud, no shyness on the mic. And those boys and everybody else, they completed log sheets as well. And they were very good with the logging. They wanted to make sure they had all the details right. They were filling it in the right place. So they did quite well with that. And memory serves me right, we ran the club over by about 5 minutes just to get these greetings messages in. I kept checking with the head teacher, and she said it was fine. So we got 3 in. Definitely couldn't get any more done. And it was about 4:20 at this point. And the head teacher said to me, she went, "Am I right to take the children away, or do you want the kids to help you pack up?" And I was like, "No, take them away, because I haven't got another 40 minutes to get packed up. I need to be back at work." So they all disappeared quite happily, and scuttered down to the mums and dads to be taken home. And during the week, I got an envelope of 4 cards off Rob, 4 QSL cards, 1 for me and one for each of the 3 boys. And I took them and gave them out the following week. And do you know what? I honestly can't thank Rob enough for that. Because the boys were really, really grateful to them. It was something to show what they'd achieved. And they really enjoyed receiving those QSL cards. So that was a really nice touch, and the school were really taken by it as well. We thought that was a nice touch from Rob. That week 3, rain stopped play. Actually, it had stopped raining by 3 o'clock, but it had rained quite heavily during the day, and we came to the conclusion that the field was just going to be too wet, and we'd just end up getting wet and muddy. So we didn't bother doing any outside activities. We stuck with the classroom. And it was a shame, really, because I posted early in the week on the Facebook group again and loads of messages were coming back saying we're really keen to work here, we're going to listen out for you, we'll make sure we're in the shack, have the radio on, and all that sort of stuff. So that was a shame, really. But just without any bigger logistics and planning, it just wasn't possible to operate from inside the school. We tried to work something out by setting it up in the playground, but then that would have meant the whole school going out a different exit while I sat in the area. With 15 minutes to play, it just wasn't feasible to do that. But fortunately, we had a wet day plan. So the children designed some QSL cards. There's a couple of examples on the screen there, if you can see them. Probably very much like our QSL cards. If you do them, they're designed with a bit of a personal reflection. So the one on the right, that adds into motocross. So we've got a motocross themed QSL card there. And the one on the left is a bit more traditional view of the village with the school on the hill and the church and the village below, going down to the beach. I took along a couple of Morse oscillators and some Morse keys, and obviously had some Morse code sheets printed out. Kids were dead happy with that. I entertained them for 20 minutes or more, just tapping out the names and various things. And it was quite good because the Morse code key they were familiar with, because they talked about the Titanic, for example. So they talked about Morse being used on the Titanic, so they'd done that in school, so they were quite keen to actually do it for themselves. A couple of the boys were quite interested in war stuff, so they knew Morse was used in the war. So that proved quite popular. I think Morse code proved very popular with children all over. I think we've probably all had success with that. One of the best things or most bizarre things was that we ended up practicing that week's spelling test. So each class does a spelling test every Friday. So we ended up practicing the words, but spelling them phonetically. So that went down quite well. I don't know how well they did on the spelling test on the Friday, but on the Wednesday they were all rhyming them off phonetically, which was quite good. And then I, just as an afterthought, I put a couple of PMRs into the kit, so they had a bit of a wander around the school with PMRs. So that quite happily occupied an hour's rainy day when we couldn't get on and do any HF. Week 4, lesson learned from week 2. So although it was good that the kids set up the kit, we didn't have the time to do that every week if we wanted to get greetings messages passed. So I'd arranged to get up to school a bit early and set up. So I got up to school about 3 o'clock and had everything set up ready for 3:15 when the kids came out onto the field. 40 metres was in much better shape. Excuse me. So after a couple of CQs, we found a couple of good, strong stations. Richard, M1, A or B, and Peter, G3 or GV. Good, strong signals. And I think the rest of the children at this point, had passed greetings messages. At this point, most of them weren't even using the script because they sort of heard it and practiced it, and they were even starting to ask Richard and Peter questions about their favourite football team and what they're having for tea and that sort of stuff. Not dissimilar to our rag chews on a Friday night, I guess. So fortunately, by the end of this session, each child had now successfully sent 2 greetings messages. So that's how many we did on with Rich and Peter. We really roused through them because conditions were really good. And there was just one exception, and that was Harry, one of the 10-year-olds. He was just a little bit mic shy, and he just didn't want to do it. And that was fine. I've made it clear from day one that there was absolutely no pressure to send a greetings message. It was up to each and every child to do so if and when they felt comfortable with it. And Harry just wasn't comfortable doing it, so that was absolutely fine. He was quite happy to listen to the others do it, quite happy to log things and do everything else, but he just wasn't confident doing that. So we had about 15 minutes left. Everybody had done the greetings, and I ended up handing out some PMRs. I actually I had a couple of PMRs, but I got a couple more during the week, a couple of 15, 16 quid ones on Amazon. So they turned up during the week. And I jokingly said to one of the boys, I think he asked about them, he said, how much were they? I think I jokingly said something like 50 quid. So I said, you owe me 50 quid. Didn't think anything of it. And then next week, he came up to me and said, I told my dad that we owe you 50 quid. He's going to get it. But, oh my God, you got to remember not to joke to 8, 9 and 10-year-olds, because they do take things a bit literal. So they had about 15 minutes left at the end of this week 4, gave them PMRs, very quick instructions, press and hold, and don't change channel, because that was what they ended up doing in the week previous. And that was it. They scattered like mice all over the school field. It was an absolute cracking day. You can probably see from the pictures there, nice sunny day there. And the teacher said to me, she said they'd done PE just before the radio club, and she said they didn't do that much running around and that much exercise in the PE lesson than they did in that 15 minutes charging around with PMRs in their hands, pretending to be all sorts. So they really, really enjoyed that. And it was quite good. I've not talked much about the teachers, but actually over the course of these 5 weeks, it was predominantly the head teacher that I worked with. But there were different teachers who would come in if the head teacher had to go and do something or a meeting, then other teacher would obviously come in, obviously to safeguard it. But they'd all come in, they were all interested, they were all wanting to know things. You know, a lot of them were saying, oh, I used to do this when I was a teenager, probably CB. But yeah, it brought back a few memories. One of the teachers used to be in the forces, so, you know, she was very much familiar with certainly phonetics, certainly radio procedure and stuff like that. So she was quite interested. So it wasn't just the children that were generally interested, it was the sort of 5 or 6 teachers who were involved as well. So I would have had a video here, and I've left this slide in again just to highlight a safeguarding point. It's just that I haven't got permission to use the video from because the child in it, the parent didn't give permission, so I can't show you the video, certainly not when it's being streamed or recorded. But it was a video of one of the girls passing a greetings message, cracking, lovely, strong voice. And then I can't remember if it was Peter or Richard, and they were commenting on how strong the voice was, how good and sort of confident they sounded on the air. So back into our last week, for me, sort of felt like the pressure was off, certainly from a passing a greetings message point of view, because they'd all done it, and that's what we'd set out to do as the club. But again, I came set up early to be ready to start the day, the minute the club started. Kids came charging up the field, got a lot of high fives that week. Don't know whether they're excited to see me or because it was the last week. I'm not sure which one it was. But I asked the children what they wanted to do. I said, it's the last week, what do you want to do? And all of them said they all wanted to send another greetings message. They were quite happy to get on the air again. So fair enough, that's what we did. With Anthony and Tim, good strong signals, 5.9 plus down onto the south coast. Sorry, these are all on 40 meters, if I've not said. And they all passed greetings messages again. And we'd done a couple, I can't remember which week it was now, but we'd done a couple of, we had a double on 20 meters, but conditions just weren't strong enough. So I think I worked at a German and a Belgium just for the children to hear. And then literally just as I was ready to pull the plug, Harry, who hadn't wanted to pass the greetings message all year, suddenly decided now was his time to shine. And he did it quite happily. Big voice, head in the air, confident message over to Tim. And then for the last 20 minutes, the kids had been asking literally from the minute they finished the greetings message, they were asking, can we have the walkie-talkies? Can we have the walkie-talkies? So they had that for the last 20 minutes. Just a little bit conscious of time, so I'm just going to rattle through the last few bits. One thing I'd thought of before starting the club was it'd be nice if the children could achieve something from the club. So rather than just a certificate of participation, and kids get for anything really, taking part in something, I thought it'd be nice if they actually had an award for achieving something. So I looked at the RSGB Radio Surfers Award. I was familiar with that. And the aim of that award is to encourage or try something new. And it's very much open to youngsters. And there's a whole list of challenges that you can choose from, and you get a point for each challenge. And basically, you've got to achieve the number of points to your age. So if you're 8 years old, you need to achieve 8 points. If you're 28, you need 28 points. And I spoke to the RSTV Awards manager and just asked if we could tweak the scheme slightly, because the scheme doesn't list passing greetings messages as one of the options, because it's more geared towards licensed amateurs. But given the fact that we were particularly about passing greetings messages, that was the crux of the club. I wanted to make sure we could get a point for that, and they were very happy to accommodate that and tweak the award accordingly. So those of you not familiar with it, that just highlights a few of, no, it doesn't, that highlights everything that the scheme does. So you can participate in a contest, join a club, build a radio, design a simple transceiver, right up to things like upgrade, get the next level of license and all that sort of stuff. So there was plenty in there for us to be able to cherry pick out. We needed between 8 and 11 points, so we were able to pick out items there to allow the kids to qualify. So the Radio Surf Award itself, anyone can judge it. Any of you guys here could run this for youngsters, part of the Youth Award. It needs a competent person to sign off each child's award. So you're just making sure they've done what they've asked to do. You then basically just send a sort of feedback form to the RSGB to qualify the award. They send you back a reference number for the award, and then you go and purchase it free of charge from the RSGB shop. It was quite funny because I had 10, so I did 10 in one go. And every time I kept doing it on the RSGB website, it was charging me something like £46 postage, despite the fact that it was free. So I had to go up to RSGB, and they said it's doing that intentionally because the web shop doesn't know what it's doing, so it's just marking up the postage to stop you proceeding. And they said we'd never sort of anticipated 10 awards being done in one go, so that was quite interesting, and they soon sorted it out anyway. And it's a digital award, so it just gets emailed through to you, and you download it as a PDF and send it off to your printer. And I can't thank the RSTB enough for this, because we were really getting quite tight for time, because we couldn't apply for the awards until we'd finished the last club, but then we only had 4 days left of term, and I wanted to get the certificates to the children before the end of term, but the RSGB stepped up and did it all for me one evening, and so I did it all in one go and sent it to me, so they were really good with that. That just shows the the points that all the individual children achieved. This was in Radcom, so you've probably seen this already. As the children were aged between 8 and 11, obviously some of the children did complete some slightly different criteria just to get the right number of points, but they all did it quite happily. Nearly there. And then on the last day of term, I was invited up to attend the final assembly and presented 10 smiley faces, well, 9 smiley faces and 1 blurred face with their certificates. And it was quite good because the teacher called all the children out and she asked what they'd learnt from the club, and they all said various things they'd learned, and one of them sort of, I learned how to spell my name phonetically, and they all said their names phonetically without getting wrong anywhere on the spur of the moment. And it's worth noting that I actually got told off by one of the 9-year-olds for not using proper phonetics a couple of weeks previously. So there we go. Feedback and learnings, last couple of slides. The amateur radio community, fantastically supportive and very complimentary on it, which was good. School were very pleased with the activities. One thing to learn, don't think 10 children saves time when setting things up, because it doesn't. It definitely doesn't save you any time whatsoever. PMRs are great fun, probably doesn't need any saying. And don't underestimate the children's confidence. You know, I've said, you know, the kids were 8, 9, 10, and 11, and you do sometimes forget that they are only 8, 9, 10, and 11. But they were really confident and really willing to learn as well, and sort of absorbing like sponges. And then the last slide, you were pleased to know, as just post-event stuff, I've just added a slide today. So I think it's been quite well received, the activity that I've done. The fact that you're sat here being forced to listen to me is testament to that as well. You know, a couple of clubs have asked me to do a talk. I also did the talk for the RSGB convention. A couple of stills there. I only saw the video this week actually, because when I was doing it live, I was doing it remotely because I was at another event. I wasn't there in person. So I didn't realise they had me on a TV, and I sort of, if anybody remembers the early days of Red Dwarf, I feel a bit like Holly in the on the TV screen there, being wheeled around. And then there was obviously the Radcom article in the November edition, and then there's been a couple of social media things as well. And quite a few emails from amateurs as well, who have thanked me for spurring them on to sort of think about doing things, and a few comments where people have sort of asked for advice, or whether I can share the book that I produced, which I have done, but I mean there's not much to it, but happily shared it, and that's it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is I don't know how long it's been, because my clock tells me it's been an hour and a half. I'm really hoping it hasn't been an hour and a half, but I think that's going to start early. Thanks for listening, and I'm more than happy to take any questions you have.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. That was a really entertaining and engaging talk there, and very heartwarming as well for all of us, because, you know, it's a discussion we've had when we've gone off and assisted at Jota, that it will be lovely to do more work with children to get them interested in the hobby. So, you know, congratulations for what you've done there. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to chuck it open really to, I'm just going to, if you don't mind, just take that slide off and get the gallery up. Right. Who would like to ask a question or make any point they like to? Chris, who wants to go first? Yeah, Gerald. Gerald, yeah, you're on mute. Gerald, you're muted. So unmute yourself, Gerald.
It took a minute to find it. something else came up on screen in front of me. But thank you, that was brilliant. The next teacher myself, about 20 years retired. It's great skills. Really impressed with the talk you've given and the work you're doing there. It's absolutely fantastic. Just comment for me about been both primary school for myself and secondary. And at secondary schools, we got our club, Denverdale. We did actually go to the local high school and got the languages department interested. So trying to get to talking to stations in Europe, of course, but they were quite keen on it. And of course, in upper schools. But I've been in primary as well, and I know what it's like. My first primary school, I set up a radio just in the corner of the classroom, explain it, and she just demonstrated it. We couldn't do NOVs and things like that in those days. It was late 60s. So brilliant to see.
Thanks very much, Gerald. So yeah, I did miss some of that. Sorry, the connection was very good, but I think I got the most of it. Yeah, do you know, I enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Everybody tells me I'm quite passionate about it, and I hope that comes across. And you know, I don't think I mentioned it then actually, but even by week 2, you know, like both the kids and the school were asking if I'm going to do something else again next year. Do you know what I mean? We hadn't even finished this year before they wanted to know that there was more to come. And in fact, the kids who, because obviously some of the children have left, the year 6s have obviously left and now gone to secondary school. They were quite disappointed that they're going to miss out on part 2 next year. So I took that as a bit of a win as well, Gerald. But I remember, I'll show you this. This was we did something very similar. Where's my camera? This is a particularly young me and a particularly young Keith from 1991, and we did that's from the Warrington Amateur Radio Club where my uncle's a member, and they used to come up and attend the summer fete of my secondary school, and they used to come up and set up a tent and aerials and operate for the summer fete back in, I think we did it in about 1991 and 92, and that was, it was popular back then. Although I think most of the members particularly enjoyed going to the pub in Coniston more than playing radio, but it was certainly popular anyway.
Lovely, thank you, Chris. And yeah, Gerald, your audio was breaking up a bit, but we did get the gist of it. Can I just make a comment quickly? That on YouTube, one of the people watching is Craig, M1ELB, who comes from Huddersfield, but is now out in Finland and is Oscar Hotel 1 Uniform Kilo who came in the first person into the YouTube chat to watch tonight. So welcome to Craig over there in Finland to this talk tonight as well. Right, any other questions or comments from anyone here in the audience? Yeah, go on, Henry.
Thanks for what you've done there. Question, how many of the teachers have taken a follow-up on that? Second thing, if you look at snail Morse keys, then that might work into the DT activities or DT post out of school activities, and perhaps drip feeding them ideas as to how they can incorporate little things into their various curricular areas will then get them to magnify your effects.
Yeah, very much so. The snail Morse key, it's funny you should say that, because I got some kits we put together for Jota in the garage behind me. There's a lot we're going to do. This club could have been a lot more, and it was really sort of a first footstep into seeing what was going to work for children of that age and for the school, and and the practicalities and my time as well. And well, the snow more ski is definitely something that we've got on the list to do again. I mean, the other activities, just again, I didn't touch on this. The other activities we sort of thought of doing, and it's daft things. Like we you can get a good view of one of the Lake District mountains from the school field, and I sort of pointed to it because you can see the cairn in the distance sticking up, and I said if somebody stood on the top there, we'd be able to work it on a handy, and the kids were quite excited at that. It didn't seem a lot, but they were quite excited at that. So I'm going to arrange for a friend of mine to go and, so it's a sorter, so I'm going to arrange for him to go and activate it at a suitable time next year, so we can do that. Kids were very keen on the thought of QR100, so talking into space, is again something that we're going to do. All things we could have done in that 5 weeks, but it needs more time, it needs more planning, and wasn't feasible for sort of point one. The teachers were they were really enthusiastic, and they were wanting to know more. One of them was wanting to know actually about getting licensed, so there's some opportunities there. The head teacher, she was especially interested, as was one of the TAs. And as far as things like the curriculum go, we actually, they had a STEM event, which one of the, I can't remember, if it was Glaxo or BAE from Barrow. I think they might have been in and taken some electronic kits with them. So there's opportunities there. There's Science Week. There's other things. There's conversations about whether we do things as part of the curriculum. Certainly things like easy things like the Morse code when they've been talking about Titanic or stuff like that. There's definitely opportunities there to sort of bring it all together. The downside is my time, my availability. So that would realistically probably have to get opened up to others locally. But there's definitely opportunity to do a lot more with that school and other schools. We have as a club. I mean, this was very much a personal project that I did, but as I'm a member of Furnace Amateur Radio Society, we have looked at doing stuff with schools previously. Ironically, secondary schools we got absolutely no response from because they were too busy doing other things. But there's definitely things out there we can do more of and look forward to doing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Henry. Thanks for the answer, Chris. Yeah, one other thing to consider, and particularly if you are going to do it next year, we've got two of our members here tonight, Adriana and Mike from Germany, who ran for us a couple of years ago a Speak German lesson for amateurs. And it struck me that if conditions were right for you, particularly on 20 or even 40, depending on where conditions are at next summer, one or two, if it was possible to build in a QSO where someone could have an opportunity saying hello in German or French, to someone across Europe, might be another little bit of dimension you can build into it that might be quite exciting for some of them.
Very much so. It's a good idea, and it's interesting actually because they do German or the French at the school. So I might be tapping you guys up in 6 months' time.
Well, we've got Mike and Adriana in Germany who speak fantastic English, and obviously even better German. And we've got Jeff in Belgium, who speaks more languages than I knew existed. But I know he speaks French. And no one speaks Flemish, of course, and he speaks very good English as well. So we've got a couple of people in the club here who could probably help you out if we knew about it. And so don't forget us when it comes to it.
No, that's gone on my to keep list. So very much so. Thanks for that one.
Okay, who wants to go next? Yes, go on, Mike.
I wanted to add that we would be delighted if something of this kind could be orchestrated next year, for example. So just give us an email if you plan something of this kind, Chris, and we are both on qrz.com, so you can reach us anytime. Would be nice. We looking forward to it.
Yeah, and just yeah, I've just grabbed your call signs there, so we'll keep them.
And Chris, it might be also you have a 705, which is excellent. Propagation on 40 and on 20 between you and Belgium is not always brilliant, so it might be a good idea to have a backup through D-Star, for example. If you have a hotspot,
yeah, true.
That would work brilliant, I think.
Yeah, good point, Jeff. Good point.
Yeah, Chris, we run a digital net once a week on a Thursday night, and we have our audience includes one of our members out in America. It includes Jeff in Belgium, Mike and Adriana in Germany, and people from Yorkshire and other parts of the UK, Scotland take part in that digital net on a regular basis. So using the D-Star, which has got which is built into the 705, is a very good way of doing it. And again, we're also happy to offer the use. We use a reflector which has been given to us to use from the Oldham Amateur Radio Club, XLX 305 Delta, XLX 305D. And we would be quite happy, I'm sure, to enable you to take over that reflector at any time if you were running it for a few weeks to make some D-Star contacts.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. I may defer that to my D-Star DMR expert rather than me, but yeah, that's great.
All right, brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Right, any other questions or comments to Chris here? Anyone else want to chip into this discussion? Yeah, Roger.
Yeah, hi, Chris. Thanks for that. It was really interesting and very entertaining. And I suppose we all knew, well, we would all expect to see science, engineering, maths, geography, history, things, that would be all part of the curriculum. But I didn't expect PE to be in there, but you could, that's really interesting. Bit of direction finding perhaps next year. I just wondered.
It's funny to say that, Roger, because that's exactly what we're going to do next year, because we got some 80-meter ARDF kit, and the school field the school grounds are absolutely perfect for that, because they're big enough, and there's some nice hiding bits where we could sell probably maybe 3 beacons for them to do a little bit of ARDF. So that is something that I actually suggested that they were keen on.
Yeah, that's map reading, PE. It's all in there, isn't it?
Absolutely. All for the price of one.
I wondered, did you have any trouble? I know you said there was always going to be a teacher with you. Did you have to fill a DSB form and do all that kind of stuff as well?
No, not at all. And it is quite funny because pretty much all these kids have been at my house because of friends of Sophia. So at no point, it does seem a bit daft. But that is what the rule is, and that's what the rule is, and that's absolutely fine. To save that, we just had a teacher on site when I was there. When I was there with the children. When I was there setting up, it wasn't necessary. But as soon as the children came out, they had one on the teacher, and they were quite happy with that. And I was quite happy with that as well, because there's also I'm not a teacher, So therefore my way of getting the attention of 10 children who were talking may well be different to how the teacher would do it. So obviously they would, quieten them down if they needed to, or bring them to task. Not that it was really needed, but no, and that it was fine.
Yeah, that's good. I wonder, did you get any interest from the parents as well afterwards? Did the parents buy into any of this?
Do you know what? They didn't, and I've not heard anything. And probably the back of my mind, I was probably sort of hoping for a bit of that. Other than a lot of people saying in the playground, oh, Harry really enjoyed this, or so and so really enjoyed that. So I've had plenty of that from all of the sort of 10 sets of parents, but none of the where can you sign me up at? But that might come. That might the more we, because this year, next year, but this academic year, obviously there'll be new children, so therefore, because obviously children have gone into into year 4. So this year there'll be some new children, hopefully in the group. So hopefully some new parents. So you never know. We might. There's time yet to pick some up.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
That's okay.
Yeah, Chris, and I did notice that. So of course you made your first contact pretty well with radio amateur royalty in this country. Peter G3OJV.
Yeah. I thought you might pick up
Peter Waters of Waters and Stanton.
Yeah.
And that was quite a chance, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was purely by chance. And do you know what? Dead nice, absolutely brilliant, dead good with the children. And it's quite interesting actually, because Rob G0HRT, he was my very first QSO when I got my first M6. So that felt a little bit personal as well. That was quite nice. I don't think Rob remembered it, but it's the first entry in my logbook from 14 years ago. So that sort of felt quite nice as well.
Yeah, fabulous. I've got a question from one of the YouTube watchers, Steve.
Yep.
He said, did you find the current UK licensing conditions in regards to sending greeting messages to be restrictive? Would you have liked to have given them the push to talk?
I think that I think the children would have liked to have had push to talk, because it was very much a wrestling the microphone out of each other's hands. They didn't seem to be. They particularly wanted, and it's the same with Jota as well. They particularly want to take it and do it themselves. So I think I can see the argument for it being restrictive. In that respect, because obviously people who aren't licensed don't understand why you've got to hold it. You can explain it to them, but obviously they still don't fully understand it. But not particularly. It is what it is. It's how the license conditions are. Yes, that may well change moving forward, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that if the new proposals are adopted.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I know under the Ofcom discussion at the moment, changes to the conditions in relation to sending messages is going to change, isn't it?
I mean, I remember this event that I showed you. I remember having a microphone, and I would have been passing a greetings message, and I remember it wasn't Keith who was on the mic at the time. I remember just automatically, and I was unlicensed at this point. I remember going, DL1 ABC, this is GX4, blah 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 blah, and I literally did the over with the mic in my hand, and I remember the operator sat next to me had a look of absolute horror, and the blood drained from his face. But there we go.
The world didn't collapse, Chris.
The world's still spinning.
Anyone else with a question to Chris? No, if no one else has got another question, just check on. No one else has popped up on YouTube. Chris, can we show first of all our thanks to you in the normal way? It was a really, really entertaining talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think I would just speak on behalf of everyone here. I think you've given us all a bit of food for thought about how we could possibly interest some of the schools in the locality, and do something similar ourselves, even though we haven't got. Well, actually, no, we've got our ex club secretary Ian in here, who's got kids who are still in secondary education locally. Forget the parent identity bit to it, which probably made it slightly easier for you. I'm pretty sure that we could do a little bit more to try and take amateur radio into the community a bit better. So, giving us great food for thought. It was a really, really very, very engaging talk, and you've done a fantastic job up there. Very impressive.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I was aiming to beat the Titanic record, but I don't think I did. So maybe next time.
Yeah, and it just picking up on one thing, you were quite right about Morse code. My experience of my own grandchildren, even at a very early age, is that they are just fascinated with Morse code, fascinated with what it is and what the letters are, and spelling out their names. And we have done that at the scouting events in Jota for a couple of years at Bradley Wood when they were doing it. They haven't been able to do it the last 2 years. I hope they're able to do it again soon, because we did take and set up club stations there, and we ran some activities, and they all were very pleased with their certificates for sending and receiving Morse code to each other, and found that very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because it's difficult to see, but this is literally a flashy. Hold on a minute, turn it on, it might help. This is literally an LED, and then switch it. And that's a little something that I made for my daughter. Well, we made it together during the lockdown. She wanted it to beep, she wanted it to flash, and she's taken that to school a number of times for show and tell. And it's always the most popular thing. It's always something that gets ripped out of every kid's hand so they can have a beep or a flash. So Morse code is definitely that sort of quite easy hook to children, very much so.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much indeed, Chris. It's been very, very good having you here tonight. I'm going to say good night to the people watching on the YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the presentation as much as we all did. And I'm going to finish the recording, saying just again a very big thanks to you, Chris M0KPW, for coming along tonight and giving the talk. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, and it is nice to see a wide selection in the audience from various parts of the UK and further afield. And it has, do you know what? It's been a genuine pleasure to present to you this evening, guys. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Cheers, Chris.